Hey guys, Richard Aficionado Channel and reefs.com, and we're in the show floor of ReefAPalooza Chicago. Actually, the show is so rumbling right now, we had to actually step outside, and I'm actually very excited to be here with none other than Bob Stark of ESV. How are you, Bob?
Hey, how you doing, Richard?
Thank you so much for coming here.
Thanks for having me and picking this nice quiet spot.
Right. You know, I've been actually meaning to do an interview with you for such a long time. Bob is actually someone that I look up to greatly in this hobby. One of the few people that I actually truly look up to, you know, like Craig Bingman, Julian, they're one of the few people that I actually just take my word by the face of it.
Oh, thank you very much.
And Bob, you know, like today we're here because I actually want to know a little bit more about your salt. I was told that your salt is actually the only one of its kind that doesn't come everything formulated into one. How does that work?
Yes. Well, it's an idea I had for a while, and because of the labor and everything involved with putting something like this together, we would never be able to be competitive. But over the years, you know, the prices of these reef specialty salts have come up, and finally we saw an opportunity. Well, let's try to put this out there, and it's been out for quite a few years, but you know, thanks to some videos with both Reef and other people that are seeing the results of it, it's kind of got like a new awakening, so to speak.
Right.
And
they did an amazing video, you know, like where they put out how they showed how clean your salt was.
Right.
They put through the, I believe it was 1 micron filter, right? And it showed no change of color. Right. You know, whereas you know some other brands they show like clayish looking, like brownish color and such residue. And I think your salt is the only one from the BRS that gave you 10 out of 10, right?
That's what they, yes.
That's a huge
10 out of
honor.
10. It is.
Yeah. So tell me, like, what does your salt consist of?
Well, the way we solve these problems of like inconsistent batches and cloudy batches, because maybe there's some precipitation between some maybe calcium chloride or carbonate, bicarbonate buffers, if some humidity gets into a completely dry mix, we separate things. So what you don't see here is, so this would be a 100-gallon unit. On the top, when you take the lid off, there'd be a 20-pound bag of ultra pure sodium chloride, which mixes up squeaky clean, very low heavy metals. And then we also have USP grade magnesium sulfate.
Okay.
All right, so there's your first two components. Then all of the other chemicals that go into this, these are the ones that are more problematic with, you know, contaminants and dirt that we find. You can get these magnesium sulfate and the sodium chloride very clean.
Yeah.
So the way we get around that then is we make two solutions. We have to use two because one has alkalinity, the other has calcium, but all the other elements we formulated into these two liquid components. So we have component A, component B. By putting them in solution, the ratios are locked because you have uniform solutions. You don't have to worry about any alteration of any individual element. And then we can kind of purify this a little bit if there's any kind of contaminants. So this comes out like crystal clear, and then you just have, in this unit, this is a retail 100-gallon unit in a bucket. We give you scoops and a measuring beaker, but most people that like stick with the salt, they're going to end up buying like a 10-pound digital scale. Right. And it's a little more practical than these.
Yeah.
And you know, and then we have this
instruction booklet
sheet for different size batches, and it's broken down either by volume or weight. You can it's a recipe.
Yeah.
It's extra work. Some people are turned off by that, but it's one of those things where once you do it and you realize how fast everything dissolves and mixes, and now you're confident that all the levels are consistent, and you see the cleanliness of it. A lot of people realize that, you know, and they actually see benefits with the corals too.
So
you don't have to test every batch and worry about if the salts are all mixed to uniform.
Right. So what can people expect from using ESV salt?
Cleanliness, I believe the bulk reef video showed long-term stability without anything precipitating out over, I think they did like 2 weeks or so.
Right. Talking about precipitation, I had a question. Because like when we dose, it is a no-no to dose alkalinity and calcium at the same time because that causes precipitation. But you have a formula here that has calcium and alkalinity. How did you counter precipitation?
That's a good question. One of the things is you're putting these elements and these components in a specific order. So you're first going to dissolve the sodium chloride.
Right.
Then you put in the magnesium sulfate.
Right.
Now magnesium helps prevent precipitation. You get ion pairing with the magnesium. Magnesium tends to surround negatively charged carbonate ions to a point where it actually interferes with calcium precipitating. That's why in seawater, typically you'll see higher calcium and alkalinity levels than you would see that you could get in fresh water because it's the magnesium allowing that.
Gotcha.
So that helps. Also, the alkalinity component is pretty much based on bicarbonate. So the pH of it is lower than a lot of the 2 parts that you're probably thinking of.
Right.
So that helps prevent precipitation also.
Gotcha. And sorry to interrupt before, but you were saying that what we were expecting from ESV salt, and then you said the cleanliness.
Cleanliness and consistency.
Consistency.
So, a lot of people they mix up a batch of salt and they want to test all the parameters and they'll find things off and they have to modify it and,
Right.
and that. You can do it that way, that's fine. But with this salt, you're going to, as long as you measured everything out correctly, everything is going to be right on the money every time.
Gotcha.
And one thing that was interesting when I developed this salt was I had a nano tank that basically had a lot of xenia in it. So I mixed up the batch and I did like a 90% water change. Because a lot of times with xenia, any other salt, if you did something like that, they'd close up for a while, especially if you just mix the salt.
Right.
Well, when I did it, I realized in like 5 minutes, all the xenia were pulsing again. So I knew that kind of differentiated it from some of the other mixes out there.
Gotcha.
At least as far as speed of use.
Gotcha.
I can mix this up. If I want to do water changes at the tank with ESV, I could start a batch of this, and within an hour, it's crystal clear and I can use it for water changes.
You mentioned earlier that your salt is completely balanced, and then if that's the case, then why do we have like trace elements of Bionic?
Okay, well, when you mix up salt, you hopefully have all the trace elements and everything in the correct ratio for that mix. But then things start to deplete.
Right, because of the corals and such.
Add, the Bionic, by the way, 25 years next year on the market for a 2-part. And the reason this was formulated was back in the day, everybody was just using kalkwasser pretty much. And they found that while it's great, it revolutionized reef keeping, I think.
I really love kalkwasser.
There's limitations to it.
Oh, definitely,
right?
Definitely.
And so people would start adding calcium chloride and a sodium-based buffer to supplement it. And then the whole issue came up. We were all on some of the boards like Fishnet, CompuServe Fishnet, and Craig Rigman was on there. Randy Holmes came in a little later, and the whole issue came up of, well, if the calcium from the calcium chloride is binding with the carbonates from the buffer, you're leaving behind sodium chloride. And over a long period of time, that could end up skewing some of the ions. Like you're adding calcium alkalinity and a pinch of table salt, sodium chloride, to your tank. So Bionic was formulated, instead of doing that, all of the other ions of a good artificial mix are in there in the correct ratio. So you're adding calcium, alkalinity, and then like a pinch of a synthetic sea salt. So you're not throwing off any ions.
Right.
But the amounts of those major, minor, and trace elements that are in there are all in that seawater ratio. So while you've added a significant amount of calcium and alkalinity, you really only added a small amount of the residual ions relative to how much of those ions are already in the water.
Right.
So what we find is that's actually very beneficial. We have magnesium also in this 2-part, and that's something like I think people have forgotten over time, like where's your 3rd magnesium component? We were able to formulate that into the 2-part. Why there's 3 parts, I'm not sure. It's certain other companies, but maybe because they're trying to use magnesium sulfate. Magnesium sulfate would be incompatible with either the calcium or the alkalinity component.
Gotcha.
So you would get magnesium carbonate or calcium sulfate
Right.
precipitate out.
Yeah.
So that forced a 3rd component.
Gotcha.
But we were able to use other salts with those ions and do all of that same thing in 2 parts. But certain ions, so the transition elements, iron, manganese, zinc, these are found in very low parts per billion or less concentration.
In regular salt.
And it's depleted rapidly, so we came up with actually with the help of Joe Waiulo at the Long Island Aquarium.
Also, Joe had a hand in this.
He did.
Gotcha.
He did. He actually let me use his 20,000 gallon tank as a test tank.
Oh, wow.
I mean, we had a little agreement on what the formula was going to be to start out. We made some modifications.
Gotcha.
But it's really just a little extra dose of iron, manganese, zinc. We can't tell you the exact quantities of those. However, if you total them all, you're only talking about 15 parts per billion per day.
Yeah.
So that seemed to make a difference if you're growing macroalgae and things like that.
Oh, for sure. Manganese is something that's a lot of algae love it, and then like corals like Gonioporas experience so much higher level of success with introduction of manganese into the tank.
Yes,
For Goniopora, trachees, they all love that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're important. And if you think about the bio load of corals in your tank and the volume of water, these elements are being depleted rapidly. Plus, a lot of these elements, there's mechanisms where they could precipitate out inorganically. Iron hydroxide could form in your tank if the conditions are right. So there's 2 products. One of them is just the iron, manganese, zinc. The other we kind of combined because Joe had some nitrates he was dealing with, and he was carbon dosing. So I said, well, you know what? Let's make a version where there's an extra organic carbon, citric acid, and we put some vitamin C in there because that was kind of implicated with there's some research showing that is involved somewhat with calcification. So we put that in there as a carbon dosing source.
Right.
So the idea is if you have nitrates, you want to bring them down, you could use this product. If the nitrates go too low, you just switch over to this, so you stop your carbon dosing, but you're still adding the same element.
Right.
And the only other elements that we add are a once-a-week addition of a strontium, 20% strontium chloride solution and a 1% potassium iodide. Just once a week. So, because we feel that it's in the Bionic, probably being depleted based on some testing that we've seen.
Right.
So our whole philosophy is shoot under the radar, and our products are kind of like concentrated where you're adding these things, but we feel we're confident in the concentrations where you're not going to overdose.
Gotcha.
So
there's a lot of times
like
user errors.
or trying to micromanage all the elements.
Right.
Try to keep it simple.
Now, it was funny because you mentioned, how things are changing. There has been so many change within the last 10 years of our hobby. Now, you being, one of the experts and forerunners, in this hobby with all these changes, what are your predictions for the next 10 years?
Oh, that's a good one. I think what I'm looking into now, because one of my favorite things is to just jump into the scientific literature of what's going on in coral reefs, and all of this DNA sequencing of bacteria and a better understanding of the bacteria, plus that's kind of going on in other areas, including human beings, with the gut biome, and we're finding out more and more how important the bacteria are. That what I think could happen is we are going to get a better understanding of things that we do as aquarists that might relate to the types of bacteria that are favored in our system. So there might be things we're doing now that more pathogenic bacteria are favored, and that explains some coral disease that we're seeing, and that's
Right.
kind of what's being found on the natural reefs.
Right.
The more I read these papers, the more I'm amazed we're able to keep any SPS corals, because there's
Right.
so many
Oh, it's
things
so-
that can
so
affect
different.
the coral
Right.
biome
And how we keep in our system and then how it's in the wild is also completely different as well.
Exactly. It's almost like we have something to offer
Yeah.
as to things like, why are we keeping these corals and now they're getting wiped out in the natural environment? And
Right,
maybe
right.
scientists need to look more at our tanks.
Yep.
Because there could be something in there. We've had this conversation before.
Yes, yes, sir, we did. And,
Super corals could
Yep.
be in our tanks. Right?
And I think it's funny because that's where that's exactly the same thing that Charlie Varon said a couple years ago with me.
Really?
Yeah, and he was saying, like us hobbyists, we have such important roles to play, and then we have to become that bridge between the scientists, academia world,
Right.
and the conservation world, because we have so much more, experience, hands-on experience on keeping these animals alive.
Exactly.
Because Charlie Varon, he said that he had many tanks in his house. He could never keep a coral alive. So I mean, but he knows, right? And
It's amazing what we're
Yeah.
doing, because we're really, just using our powers of observation. Yes, science, chemistry, very critical. We all need to have a pretty good understanding of that, and this
For sure.
hobby is great
Yeah.
instructing us in that. I think
Yeah.
Craig was talking about that.
I love Craig.
We're also able to keep these things,
Right.
and they're dying in the wild.
Yeah.
So, as much as we got from science,
Yeah.
science might need to start taking a closer look at what we're doing.
Right.
And
And then
maybe-
because we could have offered, I think, so much more data that a lot of them can't afford to do yet, because they don't have the grants or they don't have the
controlled
Right.
system.
right. And
What's going on with the coral spawning? This is amazing. We're controlling this in a
Yeah.
controlled environment.
and I think we have like a little over 5 million home aquariums just in the United States alone.
Right?
So I mean, I think that's something untapped potential that they should definitely tap into.
It's going to be interesting times. I mean,
Yeah.
I hope these coral problems in the wild resolve, and
Yeah.
a lot of it, I think, is, climate change is probably part of it, but it's also
Man-caused
runoff
pollutions and
nutrients
yeah.
and indirect climate change, increased rainfall is running more stuff off into the reefs. And
Right,
I
right.
think we're starting to see links between that and
Yeah.
organic nitrogen is becoming a thing to look at now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we might be growing the corals that may have to be reseeded to restore the structure of a reef.
Right.
There might be some big decisions like,
Actually
should we
allowing
take
people.
corals from one ocean,
Right.
is going to live in this ocean just to be able to grow a reef?
It's funny you mentioned that because I live in South Florida, and then we have huge restoration efforts over there for elkhorn corals and capricornus and such. And it's funny because we have just a boundary line that separates one county from another, and we can't bring coral literally from 4 inches from that side over to the boundary, because then it's
Even the same species.
yeah, even the same species,
Well-
literally few inches apart, that just separated by that boundary line. You can't.
We're going to have to
Plant
rethink
it.
something.
Right.
I mean, all these regulations, I understand the origin of them and why they were important.
Right.
Things are changing.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see.
That would be definitely be interesting. Well, thank you so much for taking your time with me, explaining everything about ESV and your salt and your product. Like I said earlier, you're somebody that I really respect greatly in this industry.
Glad we finally got together. I know we've been
yeah.
talking about having to do this.
Yes,
and,
sir. Yes, sir.
Really appreciate it.
No, I really appreciate you taking your time out on your busy day, and I look forward to your more innovation. And congrats again on 25 years of excellence of ESV.
Next year.
Right.
We're working on some things that hopefully will, release next year. That might be some exciting things.
Awesome. I look forward to
right.
it. Have a great show.
Richard, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.